people nowadays already are struggling with just mental health just to survive.
Yeah.
And then you've got a home, you've got a family, and now all of that, home and everything's just tore up. That's gotta pull on your mental health.
It was so good for me, the storm was mentally, because it really burdened me with such a purpose.
That is a crazy statement to say. Losing everything I've ever worked for in 30 seconds has helped my mental health. So, I mean, tell me a bit about you and who you are. Obviously, I've gotten to know you a little bit in the past, but tell me who you are.
Sure. Well, my name is Jordan Baize. I live in a little bitty town called Bremen, Kentucky. I was born and raised in our little community. Never lived more than 4 miles away from the house I'm living in now, which to a lot of folks would seem like a really boring life, but to me, we love life and what it looks like in our little community. I'm a dad to the 2 sweetest kiddos in the world, Max and Annie Grace. They're 11 and 7. I'm a Christian person of a strong faith. And I'm involved in my church and play some music, and we play some music out on the road a little bit. We stay busy, that's for sure.
Yeah, so Bremen, Kentucky is a pretty small town. What made you want to be there?
Well, I was raised there. Actually, I guess probably as long back as I know, our family has lived in that little neck of the woods, and grew up there. Went to elementary school at Bremen Elementary School, where my kiddos go now. In fact, the home that we lost, and I guess we'll talk about that later, sat on a little 13-acre farm, which is a very last property and a dead-end road in Bremen, that my grandparents owned for years and years. So I grew up climbing those trees on that property, just like my son Max has. And I don't know, man, I just maybe it's just my down home nature, but that means a little something to me,
Yeah, so living there all your life, and I know that's kind of one of those areas that storms can hit, or it's something, it's something to keep in the back of your mind, but being there, having a life there, and then, a massive storm comes through. I mean, how do you handle that, and what was that night even like? I mean, that's got to be traumatic.
Yeah, it was. I've never really thought much of storms. We get them, not tornadoes a ton, but thunderstorms and such. But grew up in a home with a basement, and so I always grew up with this sense of security, maybe an imperfect sense of security, but we never feared storms too much. And that night was a little different. The weather reports were pretty ominous. And then it hit a town, I don't know, I'm going to guess 120 or 30 miles from us, Mayfield, Kentucky. And that tornado marched right through downtown, tore up their city center, and killed several. Terrible loss, and we had heard about that storm producing that kind of damage. And then the storm got another town closer to us. This one's probably 50, 60 miles from us, Dawson Springs, Kentucky. And at that point, I wasn't really afraid, but just in a mindset of preparation, make sure that we have what we need. We, kind of accounting for our family members, make sure they were somewhere safe. And so, it was, like I said, we don't have a lot of, I didn't come into that night with a lot of fear, but after it hit Mayfield, we began taking it very seriously.
Yeah, in Mayfield, we, doing what we do, we were there in Mayfield. I mean, that was probably the worst I've seen. I haven't been as tore up in seeing destruction as Mayfield. I mean, the candle factory there, I mean, I know you know about that, but it was probably 30 or 40 people died
Yeah.
one spot is pretty terrifying. I mean, what is that? That's got to do something to your mental state, seeing that on the news and knowing
Yeah.
it's not too far away from me. I mean, I don't know. How do you even handle that with your family, with everyone, everything you've ever had right there? And hey, there's the proof that
Yeah.
it could be gone tomorrow and it's headed this way. I mean, that's pretty scary.
It is. It is. And my kiddos were with their mother that night, and they weren't with me, and they don't have a basement, and she doesn't have a basement in her home. So I called and I said, "Hey, I know you probably got a plan, but this storm has hit in Mayfield, and it's pretty serious. Maybe you guys should consider coming to the house." We had a basement at my home, and she said, "Well, thanks." She was appreciative, thanks, but I think we're okay where we are. And then the Dawson Springs destruction, I called again and said, "Hey, look, if you draw that line, between Mayfield and Dawson, and you keep going, that's headed our way, and I think you maybe should, y'all should find a basement to be in. You're welcome here." And they ended up coming to the house, which made this daddy's heart, settle down just a bit. Even just to have the kiddos, there with me when bad weather's coming, you always would prefer that. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of the nature of a divorced home. You don't always get that. There's sometimes big things are happening, and maybe they're not with you for them, that's an odd feeling. But that night, thankfully, we were all together.
Yeah, so when something like that happens, do the phone lines go out? I mean, just jump. I mean, I've never been through it. I mean, I would be worried that I could even get the text out. What is it like when it's getting closer to you? Does phone lines go out? What is that like?
Yeah, we kept getting alerts on our phones until we lost power. So we were, how your iPhones, mine anyway, when you have severe weather, it'll just scream at you, this big siren or alarm sound, and it was going off all night in warning of the storm. But the last one, after the kids made it to the house, the last one said, it was different. The language was different, and I'm convinced even today it was in an effort to scare people into shelter. And it said, I'll never forget the language. I'll be really close to getting it exactly right. It said, "A life-threatening storm is in your immediate area. Seek shelter immediately." And the way they phrased it, it was ominous. And so we were in the living room of my home, and went down to the basement. And that was just probably, I'm going to guess that was 5 minutes before impact. And so even up until that point, we were having cell signal. But after the storm, we didn't. I'm assuming it maybe took out some towers or something as it came through.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, what were your kids shook up? I mean, having those, and it's not a nice alarm either. I mean, we get them sometimes for storms and things like that. But I mean, what were they feeling when those alarms were going off? Because to them, it's real. You might know, hey, we're in shelter, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, it was so wild, and I think just speaks. And okay, look, here's the deal. I'm an accountant and a musician. Okay, I'm not a child psychologist, so this is just a layman's guess. Okay, but I think it really speaks to the way that we internalize trauma. At the time of we were in the basement floor when the storm came through. We were in the basement floor. I had a spare king size mattress down there, just in storage. And there were 5 of us, me and their 2 kids, their mother and her husband. And we're on our hands and knees, and we had covered ourselves with a mattress. And Annie Grace is next to me, and she never, I'm talking, it come through the front door of the house and went out the back, okay? The storm did. It probably took 60 seconds start to finish, be my best guess. And it sounded like it was tearing up Jack. And you knew it was there, okay? She never made a peep. I mean, never made a sound. On her hands and knees there next to Daddy, you know. Max, 2 people down, bless his little heart. Sounded like he was coming unglued, you know. He was in a shape. And I thought, afterward, later that night, I thought, man, I'm really glad that Annie handled that so well. Max was really afraid. Okay. Now, in the weeks and months that followed, our little town would test our tornado siren on Saturdays at noon. Okay, which really, with regard to PTSD, and again, I don't. We're talking to the wrong guy here about this, but I would imagine might not be the best choice considering what the town's been through, you know. I'd probably elicit some emotional responses, I would think.
Yeah.
But so on Saturdays at noon, they test the tornado siren in our little town. And for months, when they did, Max would look up at me just as cool as a cucumber and say, "We need to go inside, Dad?" And I say, "No, buddy, it's just a test, all good." Annie Grace would hear it and come wherever she was, running and screaming, scared to death, you know. Bless her little heart. Mm. And I say all that to say, you ask about how the kids did with it. I think that, you know, we deal with issues and deal with fears and trauma differently. Sometimes we internalize it and it comes out afterwards. Sometimes we hit it with brunt force up at the front, and we're pretty cool after, you know. So it just, people deal with things differently. And it was a pretty neat picture for me to see how their personalities differ, but they're doing good. They're good. You know, we're just a little over 2 years past our storm, and the kiddos are healthy and happy and whole, and they're good kids, man. They love Jesus. And a year ago, December, I baptized them both. Got to help baptize them here at our church, and I mean, our family is very blessed.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's always good to see something like that. You know, family's doing well, you're doing well. I mean, you've had a full transformation. You know, if anyone doesn't know, you've probably lost what, 100-some pounds since the storm.
Yeah,
you look like it's only half of yourself from what I met when we first came to the storm. So
yeah, I had to let my weight really get out of control. This is funny that we're talking about this. I've not really had this conversation, you know, anywhere public, but I kind of let my weight just get to a bad spot. I was a big dude, you know, and I had a health scare and really knew I needed to get it. We needed to take hold of that issue. And so, let's see, September of 22, so about 9 months after the storm, I guess, I had weight loss surgery. And so I'm, I guess, a year and a half past it at this point, and I'm down to right at 170 pounds. I feel wonderful. I feel better at 36 than I did at 26. You know, so I don't know how long I can age backwards, but it's working for me right now. So we're going to stay on.
I know you look wonderful. Oh. Well, I know you said you had a health scare. Did the storm have anything to do with you wanting to make that drastic life change? You know, did the storm make you want to lose all that weight, or was that not a factor?
You kind of froze up there for a second. Can you hit me with that question again?
Yeah, absolutely. So did the storm have anything to do with you wanting to lose the weight? You know, was the storm a reason that you wanted to lose all of that weight?
No. It'd probably be better for a God's Pit Crew podcast to say yes, you know, but I really don't think so. I mean, to the degree that it puts some reality on the shortness of life, maybe, you know, but it was something on the radar before. But But the storm does and did in many many ways add some pretty serious perspective to life. It really reprioritizes things that matter. I say this often when I'm teaching leadership theory or just talking to people. I often say, if you took a test like we used to do in school, and they put out a quiz on your desk, and you had to correctly order your priorities. I always say you'd get the right answer. Like you make an A on the test. We all know, faith and family, and then health, and then making sure that we're instilling good values in our kiddos, and then maybe our financial goals, and then our golf hobbies are way down the list. Like we get them right on paper, but then the question is, all right, so look at your paper, look at your A quiz, but then how are we living them though? Because we know intellectually where our priorities should lie, but sometimes they don't really come out of our hands and our feet that way. And so I think anytime, a near-death experience, you really take a little bit of a closer look at, is my life aligning well with
that piece of paper?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it should.
Yeah.
There's a difference sometimes, maybe say it this way, between what I know life should look like and what it kind of is looking like. And that doesn't make you a bad person, it makes you human, But so I think those sorts of big life events really help us to just reprioritize, make sure I'm an accountant, so I say we reconcile. I use that word a lot, that we reconcile our lives back to where we want it to be,
Yeah. And I'd actually love to ask some more questions, later on about the mental health of all that. But before we get to that, I'm just curious, you said that it came straight through the storm came straight through the front door and right out the back door, and you and your children are underneath that.
Yeah.
What is that feeling? What is that sound? I mean, it's got to be insane to have one of the biggest forces of nature literally on top of you.
Yeah. The sound, everybody says it's a freight train, and I guess maybe it is. I don't know. I've never been underneath the freight train, but it's let's just talk what it is. I know it is. I know it was loud. It was very loud. And I tell you, too, I'm a lumber guy. So our family, I can see my hat, Baize and Sons, lumberman since 1955. In 1955, my great-grandfather bought a team of mules and a chainsaw and started cutting timber. And in this January makes 69 years as a family. It's the only way we've ever paid a light bill, okay? And so I know a little bit about lumber, and I know what it sounds like when it comes apart the way it's intended, and I know what it sounds like, thanks to this tornado, to what it sounds like when it feels like it twists, Yeah. It comes apart unnatural ways. And man, maybe it was, the kind of industry I was raised in, but I remember hearing that house come apart over our heads and thinking, this is not natural, Yes, really, in a sense, it is. A tornado it's a naturally occurring act, but it didn't feel natural. It didn't sound natural. It was there was a twist to the house, and the sounds of it coming undone were just wild. And then what it left was strange too. So, we'd go up when we got to kind of examine the house the next morning in the daylight. There'd be one thing that I'm reminded of is a light switch, a plate. The plate was there on the wall, but the switches were out of it. And I thought, how did that happen? I'm not a builder. How did that happen? But apparently, when the roof went, it pulled the wire in.
Pulled the wires.
And the switches were connected to the wires, so the faceplate's still on the wall, and you can look in and see drywall through the faceplate because the electrical box, been yanked out and thrown who knows where. So just odd things like you never see that.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever seen that.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's crazy.
It felt unnatural in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, so after it went through, you said you didn't see it until the next day, but if y'all were in the basement of that home and the house is crumbled on top, how did y'all get out? How did you what was it like after, like you said, it tears it apart? What's next?
Yeah, so the first thing is come upstairs, right? And it's oddly the way the house was built, the front door was directly in line with the basement door. And the front wall of the house was missing. It was gone. But the door somehow had been ripped off its hinges before the wall vanished. Been ripped off its hinges and thrown with such force at the basement door as to lodge it underneath the basement door. So we were like almost making like an upside down T, like the basement door, and then the front door of the home is stuck underneath it. Now there's those exterior doors are pretty thick, and interior doors don't have that kind of a gap. Not that kind of. They got a gap, but not that much. So it made it made a gap,
Yeah.
Pardon me. But so we had to kick our way out of that door, the basement door coming up the steps, and then when we did, the funnel cloud's gone, thankfully, right? But it's still thundering and lightning, and we stepped out on the landing of our home, and it's raining on our heads in the living room. You look up and you can see streak lightning from the inside of your house, or what's left of it. So it was strange. We got in the vehicle, went to Mom and Dad's. They live about just under a mile away, which was such a strange experience because literally we did not pass. There was not another damaged home between my house and theirs, not one. The way the storm came and the way the roads and the houses were situated, it just, I don't know. That was still one of the stranger occurrences to me is when we pulled out of our driveway and had a home with top of it gone. But in that I think it's 8/10 of a mile to Mom and Dad's. We didn't drive over a tree limb to get there. I mean, the roads were clear, no houses damaged. That was a strange thing.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, you step out of your basement and you got to kick your way out, and then there ain't really anything left there. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But you come back the next day just to see what's left and what is left. Obviously, like you said, the front wall's gone, but the front door's still there. I mean,
yeah.
When you come back in daylight, what is left?
Well, a piano was there. That got to stick around, It was so funny what was missing and what wasn't. Like the couch was gone, but the spices were on the spice rack. It was bizarre. The front wall of the house was missing, but all my books, not all my books, but most of my books were on my bookshelf, and my built-in bookshelves in the living room. So it was strange how, like, just indiscriminately things were selected and things weren't. I had a friend of mine who went to dinner with friends that night, and they kind of stuck around a little bit later than normal. The storm hit us about 11 o'clock, I think. They had stuck around at dinner a little bit later than they had planned on, and then decided to just stick the storm out at their friend's home. Okay, and the fella had left his wallet at his house, so they went across town to a friend's house, left his wallet at home on accident. They found his wallet in the next couple of days in Bremen. Okay. But a lady from Louisville mailed his insurance card out of his wallet back to him in Bremen.
Holy cow.
Wild, okay?
Yeah.
How indiscriminate those sorts of things happened. And that's just one story. I mean, literally, we could do the next 30 minutes on those types of stories. I had a friend who lost his home just a few tenths of a mile down the road from him is a small family farm. He has a friend that works with him who owns a hunting property about 90 miles away. That really wasn't terrible. Like, it was not what I would consider in the path of the storm. I mean, I'm no meteorologist, but when I draw the line, his friend's hunting property is a pretty good piece from the storm. He went hunting a couple of weeks later after the storm, the friend of this Bremen fella. And at the base of the tree that his hunting stand, his deer stand was on, is the sign for this family farm just a minute down the road from his friend's home, 90 miles away, at the base of his tree.
Holy cow.
Those sorts of things that you think, how in this world did that happen? You know?
Yeah.
But it did.
Yeah, the craziest one, which we've done it for a long time, and you hear a lot of stories, but so I've heard this one, so I'm not, don't quote me 100%, but I've heard it. Yeah, I've heard it from credible sources. I forget which storm it was. It was a few years ago. It was a a sad story, but it was one of those that was just like, how in the world? Yeah. It was a mother, as a single mother, and she had probably a 2-year-old, 3-year-old child. Yeah. And storm's coming, so her and the child, she puts the child in the bathtub, puts a mattress on top, and she lays beside the tub. Yep. Storm comes through, and searchers are going. Well, they find the mother, and unfortunately, she had passed away, but they couldn't find the bathtub. And not even a few days later, like 50 miles down the road, someone found the bathtub with the kid in it alive. That is
bizarre.
How in the world do you even survive? I mean, there's so many. God's hand's got to be on you to be.
That's it, man.
I mean, holy cow.
Now, if I'm not mistaken,
it's insane what they can do.
If I'm not mistaken, that was our storm, and I think that occurred in Dawson Springs, I think. I could be wrong. Don't hold me to that, but I think that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's stories like that every time one comes through, and it's insane what these storms can do. And like you said, what they choose, what they don't choose. Yeah, it makes you stand back with, we go all the time, and I've seen them my whole life. I grew up in, disaster recovery. I've seen them a lot. But every time someone goes with me, they're like, this is really weird if it's a tornado. You've got one house that is just gone, and literally next door, 6 feet away, it don't look like the grass has even been torn up. And it's just, so it's insane how it's almost like it picks and chooses what it wants and what it wants to affect. But, going off of that, you come out and you see your home. You've got your kids with you. You've got all this stuff. You're going through, like you said, y'all are split. So that's already stuff on top of it. You're dealing with the health issues and wanting to lose weight and doing all this stuff. But what does this storm on top of that do to your mental health? That's got people nowadays already are struggling with just mental health just to survive. Yeah. And then you've got a home, you've got a family, and now all of that, home and everything's just tore up. That's got to pull on your mental health.
It was. I got to answer this question well and articulate it well. Otherwise, I'm going to sound crazy or unconcerned with my community, and that's the last thing that I am. But it was so good for me. The storm was mentally, because it really burdened me with such a purpose, just such purpose. We've been going, it feels like nonstop for the last, however long it's been now, 24, 25 months, just serving and helping people in one capacity or another. I lived a very quiet, private life for many, many years and liked it. I already told you my property was the very last property on a dead-end road in a town with 190 people in it, okay? So I liked the quiet. But about the summer before the storm, so probably 4 or 5, maybe 5 months before the storm, I'd kind of been recruited to run for office in our community. Uh,
And which was that?
yeah.
Just is that
Oh,
mayor? What is it?
well, this is. I'm glad you asked because I love to tell this. The position is called judge executive. It's a county-wide position, and that's a Kentucky term, judge executive. A lot of states call them county mayors, which is
Okay.
really what it is. It's the chief executive of county government. That's what it is. But in Kentucky, years ago, this person, the judge executive, um, he he took care of county budget, county employees, kept the lights on, and he was the judge in like lower level criminal issues, traffic tickets, those sorts of things. So he was both judge and executive.
And I got you.
These days, we have black robe judges that take care of those sorts of criminal matters, as they should, you know.
Yeah.
But the name is so cool, we kept it. And so judge executive is the chief executive of county governments in Kentucky. And so I ran for judge executive. I'd started the month prior to the storm. So I think November the 7th of 21, I announced my candidacy. And really, all summer long, I kind of had battled with, I love my home and I love where I am and I'm crazy about my community, want to see it prosper and thrive. But do I love it enough to come out of my anonymity and really be a public voice and a catalyst for progress here in our little town, our community? And kind of had decided in that late fall, that was our move. We were going to run for office, first time ever. Uh, didn't have a social media account, a press. I mean, I was quiet. I was off the grid. And pretty radically changed that, and then had we started our run for office, and 1 month later, the storm comes, wipes the house out. And really, from that time in November of 21 to now, I feel like we haven't stopped working. So what's it done for my mental health? It has, in the best ways, burdened me with such purpose, and really has made, it has forced an intentionality to my life that I want that, but it's easy to relax that if you're not careful. Back to that. Okay, what do you say your priorities are versus how are you living? But I think since the storm, it's really brought an intentionality to my life that I'm so appreciative for. So nobody wants the storms. Nobody asked for them. I'm being figurative now, but there are so many times in life where those rough seasons, even sometimes that rough day or that rough incident can spark such a wonderful change in your life, and that's what this storm has done for me.
Yeah, I mean that is a crazy statement to say, hey, losing everything I've ever worked for in 30 seconds has helped my mental health. But I fully understand what you're saying. A lot of people, and it's really your outlook on life. I mean, you're talking about your priorities. You've got to have decent priorities to have something like that happen and not play the victim and just get on the horse and say, man, this is pressure, and it's made me see how tough life is, but it's also made me see how beautiful life is. I'm still here. I've still got my family. I've still got the most important things. So none of this stuff matters. And what does matter is the community around me, the people around me. So that's such a beautiful way to look at a really terrible situation, but that's not the only thing that came from the storm, if I'm correct. Like you said, there was your piano that was left in the house, and obviously you said that you're a musician, but you didn't have social media or anything, so you were a closet musician, it sounds like.
Well,
but
I never had posted anything, any videos of me playing. I've been playing piano since I was about 10 years old, and I never really posted anything. I I've always had this really weird relationship with self-promotion. I've never mind. It's kind of strange. I've never minded to be seen, but I've always minded to want to appear to like the. Let's see. Let me try that again. I've never minded to be on stage, but I never wanted the people to think that I wanted to be on stage. You know what I mean? Like that I craved the
Yeah.
attention or the applause or the limelight. That's not me at all. It never
Yeah.
has been. I've traveled on the road for several years and played music and toured, and my buddies would always laugh at me and they'd say, "Jay, you just soon set your rig up backstage, behind the curtain." And I'd laugh too,
Yeah.
but the truth is that is the case. I never needed that kind of validation. And not that if that's your thing, that's fine. That's personality types, but just not mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've never really pushed or promoted my music, and I tried not to with this piano video that kind of came as a result of the storm. I tried. My sister recorded me playing. The next day, I sat down the day after the storm. Had a lot of folks there helping me to kind of salvage what things we could from the house. And my piano was still there in the living room, what was left of the living room, and I sat down to play. I thought, I wonder what kind of shape this piano's in, and two, regardless, I'd love to play it one more time, before we pack it out of here or throw it away or whatever. And I sat down to play, and my sister recorded it. I didn't know. In fact, if you watch that video on out, which we cut it because I catch her in the corner of my eye, and I turn around and I stop in the middle of the song. I'm like, what are you doing,
Yeah.
And but she asked me later that night if she could post it, and the fact that she had to ask if she could post it should say, where my approach on that typically is. And my answer was,
Yeah.
well, we don't do that. I don't do that. And apparently she sent it to a few of her friends. And she hit me up about an hour later, and she was like, "Look, I've sent this to a few friends, and I know kind of your position on this. You don't like to really throw yourself out there, but I think this situation is different." And reluctantly, I said, "Oh, okay, that's fine." And so she posted it to her Facebook account, and it kind of went wild there for a little bit.
Yeah. So what is wild? Did it? I mean, it went semi-viral. You have played at the Grand Ole Opry. You've worked with Jason Crabb and other artists that are bigger in the Christian space. But you've done so much more, and it's kind of ironic that and closet musician's not the right word, but the closet musician that just lost everything, all of a sudden losing his home is almost the reason that everyone's starting to look at you and everyone's wanting to see this video because you're playing, and it's crazy that the piano was still in tune, or at least semi in tune,
Yeah.
but what did happen after that? You lost really everything. You've come back to see what's left, and your piano's there, and you want to play it one last time, and that one last time turns into a platform for you to do so many other amazing things for other people.
Yeah, it was a wild season. The media attention was, honestly, it was exhausting. And it was hard to keep up with it for several weeks. But in the back of my mind, I know, and here's the guy that really is really coming to terms with, hey, I just as soon people not know my name, versus okay, now I'm running for office, and I kind of gotta gotta be out there if we're gonna do this well. So I'm really just coming to terms with, hey, I'm gonna introduce myself and shake hands with people I don't know and tell them I would love to have their support. So that was a big shift for me. Okay, from there to being on ABC World News and doing interviews with the New York Times and Wall Street Journal and Good Morning America, and they asked me on the Tonight Show and Ellen's people called. So it was a big jump.
Yeah, yeah.
And there was a lot of opportunities that we said yes to during that time, even if they were uncomfortable, because I knew that if I was on the camera, I would be bringing attention to my little hometown, which I'm in
Yeah.
love with, you know. And
Mm.
so I kind of, we kind of, it was a season of the Lord teaching me that, hey, Jordan, sometimes you got to put your preferences aside to do
Mm.
bigger things, to do kingdom work, to do good work. You got to put your preferences aside sometimes. And that's something that I'm learning, not learned, but learning still. So we said yes to a lot. And as part of that, and this was one of the easier yeses, I got a call from a friend of mine, Jason Crabb, who's a multiple time Grammy Award winning Christian artist and a regular performer on the coolest stage in the world. If you ask this fella, the Grand Ole Opry. And so I've grown up a huge fan of the Opry. It feels so old American to me. And I love things that feel just like old school American, you know. They're celebrating very soon their 100th anniversary and
Mm.
100th year anniversary. Let me clarify, just because that's something, you know. And so I grew
Yeah.
up a fan of that, a regular attender, audience member. And as a result of the video and my relationship with Jason, they asked me to come and play, which is really, truly, is the honor of a lifetime. It was a wonderful night. That was 1 week to the day after the storm. So Friday night, December the 10th, was the night of our storm, and then Friday night, December the 17th, we're on the Grand Ole Opry. And
Mm. That's crazy.
yeah, and then that Friday before we leave for Nashville, I get an email in my inbox from a Miss Gloria Gaither, who a lot of folks will know that name. Many folks maybe won't. But Bill and Gloria Gaither are the preeminent Christian songwriters of the last 100 years. Precious, precious people who have added so much to Christian music in their lifetime. And they're both still living in the same little Indiana rural community that they lived in their whole lives. And she emailed and said, just want to let you know we're proud of you, and we love the way you've handled yourself in the media, and you've represented the faith well. And man, that was big. That was sweet, man. They're reaching out. Oh, probably should say the reason that matters is because they wrote the song that I was playing in that video.
Mm.
Uh, New
That's
York,
got to be crazy to have that come full circle.
yeah, the New York Times called them and asked for a comment. And they said, "Comment about what?" You know. And so
Yeah.
they were made aware of the video and pretty quickly reached out. It led to a meeting and getting to meet them and do some recording, some interviews for just some media purposes for them. And I think it just was neat to sit down. However many years later,
Yeah.
from the time they wrote the song to the time it was a huge song back
Yeah.
then, but to just a couple years ago when it kind of was reintroduced to the world through a video of some unnamed guy from Kentucky that was seen millions and millions of times. Just how the Lord uses songs and music and other things, but he is so intentional with how he strings, he connects the dots. And I've learned in life that I can work and do and plan for a lifetime and accomplish less than he can in an instant in what seems like almost accident, which nothing with him is.
Yeah.
Just like in a moment's notice, he can do more than I could do in a lifetime of intentionality. So what that tells me is I'm going to work and do and go hard, okay? But if I'm not finding myself in the middle of his plan, then I'm getting cents on the dollar, man, and that's it. But when you connect your willingness to go and do and work hard with his purpose and plan for your life, very similarly, Jared, to what your folks have done with God's Pit Crew, that's when the results or the effects of that work and labor connect with his plan and purpose, and then we're talking about exponential, explosive impact. And so for a season, I feel like that's really, for a moment, that's what I got to experience, and very similarly to God's Pit Crew and the kind of effect it's having on communities and victims of storms. Man, when he
absolutely, and
good thing.
Yeah, and I mean honestly, that's I'm sure you don't need anyone to say that, or probably don't want to say it, but that is a very beautiful and strong way to view the things that you've been through in the past few years, and the things that really a whole community has come through. There's a lot of people that have been through that. Now, they might not have had this situation exactly like yours, but they've been through that haven't come out with that. So, you've got to give yourself a little bit of props. God has given it all, and we thank him for that. But at the end of the day, we do get to choose if we're going to take it the right way, or if we're going to dig our head in the dirt.
Yeah.
And coming past that, I mean, all of this is going on. You're still working. You're still helping with your family business. You've lost your home. You're now have a media storm that's following you everywhere you go, and you don't like cameras in the first place. So you're dealing with all this uncertainty, yet you're still helping build 2 houses for families it was 2 or 3 right next door to you. What was that like, and what is it, and obviously I think I know your answer, but mentally and emotionally to not have your home, but yet you are doing everything you can to give 2 other families their home. I mean, that's, again, like I said, that takes a humbleness, that takes a, God, you take the reins, I'm going to step back, and I commend you for that, because I don't know how I would react in the same situation.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, buddy. My deal was I had a warm place to be. We had our family owned a little apartment that really we kept open. It's fully furnished, and we just kept it for emergencies. Somebody's heat goes out, or get your house sprayed for spiders, and you go spend the night. That just a spare a little apartment. So the kids and I moved in there, and I didn't know it at the time. I felt like insurance would do me okay, And my position was there are people that need it more than me, and we'll figure out my stuff later. But let's go and do what we can for others while we can. And there was so much attention, media attention, and that I knew we couldn't stop, because when you stopped, it was over. So I guess what I was thinking was every time that I was being able to talk to news stations or to talk shows, or I was on the Opry or doing interviews with other outlets, I'm thinking, well, I'm bringing attention, I'm bringing awareness to home. And so it was. No, you're right. I don't love it, but it was my work during that time, and I'm honored. I hope I did it well. We just want to help and do, man. We just want to be good to people. The Lord's been so good to us. I say this all the time. I'll never be able to do enough to repay Him for the blessings He's given me. I will not be. I will not close that gap, but I'm going to go down swinging. Okay, I'm going to do all I can to try to close that gap.
Yeah. So you had worked alongside God's Pit Crew to help find building materials, and you were a crucial part in allowing us to build 2 new homes in your community. But past that, what's next? What's next for you?
Yeah. Well, we're building. We're starting the process of rebuilding our home. It's slow. Uh, Material prices are high.
Yes.
It's which you guys know. Y'all are building homes for people all the time. I don't have to tell you,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's so. It's we're headed that way. It's slow, it's going slower than I'd like, but we're working on it. We're quoting materials right now and working with subcontractors. So we're hoping to start the building process hopefully in May.
Yeah. So beyond the house, I mean, you're running for? How did they say it again? Judge
Yeah.
executive, and I mean, what else are you doing? Tell
Oh,
me,
oh,
tell
I'm
me
not
the next
running.
5 years for Jordan.
Yeah. Pardon me. I'm not running for office right now. It's a dead time politically, which is suits me fine. I have
Yeah.
come to love people, and I've loved loving on people. And I'm really loving this season where I get to love on people without there being a question of ulterior motive. Like I don't
Yeah.
need your vote today. So we're just loving
Yeah.
people, man, and I love that. I've come on as a director of finance for my church. This is cool. I'm glad I'm going to get to share this. So a few days a week now, I'm in the church office, and as a director of finance, which I love that role, and I'm an accountant by trade, and so I'm pretty good at this type of work. Every December, so we just came out of this season, we have what we call a legacy offering here at our church, and what that really means is it's just an offering that we get to take and receive, and it's really the only time a year that we're talking about money much, because the Lord is blessed and the church is doing fine. But in December, we kind of start talking about money because we're going to take up a legacy offering the second week of December, but it kind of goes the whole month. And we receive that, and then we send those dollars right back out the door in the way of just really ministry-minded or outreach-minded giving. And so in December of 22, our legacy offering was right at $15,000. And so I got to write checks to single mothers and widows that are associated with our church community. Wrote checks to nonprofit organizations and missionaries that were that we support here at the church. Wrote checks to every family resource center at every school in the county that the church is in. So I love to get to do those sorts of things and doing the great work where that's concerned. But December 23, so just this past holiday season, we really put our foot on the gas and really talked about this offering. We sold this offering really well, I think. We produced a video that had recipients of the previous year's offering and the impact that it made on their lives. And our December 23 offering had over doubled the previous year's offering. So it's like almost $34,000. And so we were able to do just wonderful, incredible things with those funds, and just helping people, loving on people. And I love that kind of work. I'm loving it. Also, we have this wild plan. I'll say wild because it's awesome. Not wild as in like a crazy plan, but like it's going to be so good. We've got some dollars set aside to do some nonprofit work. And in 24, we plan to put in what I've been calling community storm shelters. So above ground metal structures that'll hold somewhere between 35 and 45 people at a time for tornadoes. And we're going to put them in several places in Muhlenberg County. And then we're going to build an app that will map those shelters on a Muhlenberg County map, which is where we live. And then, so that's kind of step 1 and 2, build the shelters, create an app that pinpoints these shelters. And then 3, the third step to this process is we want to create an agreement with churches for something that's already happening, which is, inclement weather's coming. We got a tornado on the way. Well, Nelson Creek Pentecostal Church, our basement's open for anybody in the public can come and have shelter here if you need it. It's happening all across rural America. Okay, I want to create an agreement with some of these churches so that we don't have to go on Facebook when tornadoes are on the way. We know already, hey, for 2024, say, anytime the National Weather Service in Paducah issues a tornado warning for Muhlenberg County, these dozen churches are open to the public as refuges, which is going to rapidly populate this map of tornado-safe spaces. So you can't afford to put enough built shelters in the county to serve everybody, but those coupled with open buildings. Will pretty rapidly populate that map of safe spaces for people that don't have them, and so that's another area that we're really trying to make gains in, and we've got a team put together to see that happen by the end of 24.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I've never heard anyone talk about that, but that's pretty genius. Give anybody in rural America a place to go, even if they don't have one. That's a great idea. But so you I don't know if you personally got one, but God's Pit Crew well, you know what we do. You've seen the blessing buckets and the things that we do. But those blessing buckets, I don't know if you personally got one or know someone that did, but what are those, and what, you've lost everything, you've been in that situation. Even if you didn't personally get one, what can those do for people that have lost everything and can acquire one of those after a natural disaster?
Sure. Well, I did not get one, but we had what we needed. But I have helped pack some in your warehouse. We took a tour, and I got to help put a few together one Saturday morning, which was a blessing. They're great because they have all kinds of things in there that you guys know people need, but because you deal with storms every day. I've dealt with one tornado, and I hope it's my last. Okay, you've dealt with countless, and you're going to see many more. Okay, maybe hopefully not at your home, but you're going to go to where these sites are, so you know what folks need in the way of like immediate items. First aid, water, some dry food a lot of times, toiletry items, things that people think, hey, I'm going to need some stuff that I just, but I don't know how to get my hands on them. All power's out, travel and commuting is kind of, is at a standstill for a moment. Enter God's Pit Crew. It really bridges the gap between our needs today and getting back to some kind of a normal life, which we're headed there, but until we get there, we're going to have some needs. And those blessing buckets are a wonderful way that you guys, through your organization, feel needs. You step up, and those blessing buckets are a way to really bless families when they're in that transition time.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Just trying to give people what they need to bridge the gap, so that tonight isn't that bad when they don't have a toothbrush or or even a cloth to dry themselves off with. So, yeah, and it's been wonderful talking to you and hearing, honestly, just how you've mentally and spiritually handled this after such a terrible thing. That, I mean, very few people in this world will have gone through what you went through. And you've handled it with such grace, and it's beautiful and encouraging to me to know that we have a God that is going to take care of you, that even though everything's gone, he's got something else waiting. You've just got to, like you said, surrender it to him and get on his path. But the last question I would have is, for anyone that's dealing with depression, anxiety, or a situation like you where they've literally lost their entire home in 60 seconds, they've lost everything they love, what would you have to say to them, or what advice would you give them to get them to tomorrow or to a better day?
Sure, buddy. My advice is useless. Okay, when I need direction, though, I go to the Word of God, and one of my favorite passages of Scripture is from Philippians 4. It talks about the peace of God that surpasses understanding. I've been a Christian the vast majority of my life since I was 10 years old, but there's been plenty of times that I did not have that peace of God that Scripture promises. And I won't say I was ever angry about it, but I was confused from time to time. I think, hey, I love the Lord. I'm a person of faith. I try to do good. Why am I anxious? Why am I worried? Why am I afraid? When Scripture promises peace. But I think it's important to read the next verse there in Philippians 4, where it talks about the peace of God that surpasses understanding will guard and keep our hearts in Christ. And it can, if we do the next thing, which is keep your mind where it needs to be. Scripture says, be thinking on what the things that are holy and of good report and are just. If there's anything praiseworthy, be thinking on those, what's that mean? It means we have to be keeping our mind on godly, heavenly things. If we're looking at the problem, expecting to have peace, it will never happen. It will not happen. But if we keep our minds focused on His goodness and His provision and His willingness to meet our needs, even though that they don't look like this don't look like where we wanted to be. If we wrote our own story, if we was our own author, we'd have left maybe this chapter out of life, right? But when we allow His plan to take place in our life, even though there's going to be bumps in the roads when that happens, and keep our focus on His willingness to meet our needs, I think that's when the peace of God really flows so freely. I think about it a lot of times when I think about the story in the Gospels of the disciples on the boat on the Sea of Galilee, and the storm comes up, and they're freaking out. They're scared to death, right? Jesus is asleep at the bottom of the boat, and they come and wake him up, and he comes and they ask the question, Master, are you not concerned with the fact that we're fixing to die? And he comes up on top of the ship, and he speaks to the wind. We all know the story. He speaks to the winds and the waves, and they cease their turmoil, and they settle down. And they pass to the other side of the sea. Everybody's unharmed, right? Everybody that started on the ship made it to the other side of the sea, and we're all okay. And I think about that story a lot. And I think, if he would have asked his disciples while they were coming on board, hey, how many of y'all want to go through a terrible, life-threatening storm while on the sea today, right? 0 out of 12 is going to say, well, yeah, we'll see what it looks like. See how. Yeah. Nobody's going to ask for that. But on the backside of the storm, having went through it with him, and seen his miraculous hand in the middle of tumultuous situations, and to see how that what looked like certain death can be, we skate right through it with him, not without bumps and bruises, cuts and scrapes, okay? But we can skate through it with him, make it through it with him. And on the backside of that, there's lessons learned, there's character built, our faith is strengthened. And I think coming off that ship, if you'd asked those same 12 disciples, hey, I know you didn't ask for this storm, but are you better off now because of what you've been through with Christ? I think you would have gotten a different. I think you'd get a different answer than if you'd asked them on the way on board. I know that I never asked for, this chapter of life to look like it has for me. I liked my other house just fine. Thank you very much. But I would tell you that because of the storm, that my faith is strengthened. I have, I'm a changed person in many ways, and I'm thankful for the experience.